Hi, Jeremy here, Modern Vitality. In today's video, we're talking about smoothies. And if you have fibromyalgia or you're dealing with fibro, trying to get out of that condition, smoothies may have been one of the best ideas you heard of. However, I'm here to tell you, you may as well dump it down the toilet. I'm going to give you 3 reasons why, and I'm going to give you also some things you can do instead. So let's get started. Okay, so first of all, I'm not immune to this. I had my love affair with smoothies back in the day. Okay, this was long before I started Eastern medicine training. I'm a clinical herbalist, right? I've got a very strong background in Chinese medicine, Eastern medicine. And there are some paradigms, some things that we can learn from Eastern medicine and then take that back and look at some of these kind of common health or wellness practices. So for example, today we're doing smoothies, but there's a ton of these we could dissect. And you take this lens and you start to look at the physiology of the human body and you go, okay, smoothies. Is this really something that's going to be helpful for us? Because it looks good, right? It looks good on paper, sounds good. It's one of these things where it's a wellness idea. If you see somebody making a smoothie in the morning, boy, have they got it together, right? They probably exercised and they're healthy and all this. That's the imagery we have associated with this idea of a smoothie. But I'm going to give you 3 reasons why anybody with a complex chronic inflammatory condition is probably doing more harm than good by having a smoothie. So the first one I'm going to start with is the obvious one. It's cold. Okay, warm smoothies are disgusting. You're not drinking warm smoothies, right? It's gross. Nobody wants that. Part of the appeal of a smoothie is that you've got all these things together and they're, you use frozen fruits and things like that and you blend it all up and then you have this cold drink. As it gets warmer, you wouldn't want to drink it. Okay, that's just normal. So everybody drinks their smoothies cold for the most part. That's just the way it is. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that we didn't evolve with cold drinks. That's a new thing for humans. Think of how long we've had refrigeration for. Think about that. This is a relatively new thing to even have ice in our drinks, to have the ability to keep things cold. Most cultures had to ferment their food to make it through the winter. They didn't have refrigerators that they would put. Think about, Native Americans or Inuits or tribal people in Africa or Aborigines in Australia. Anywhere you go, right? Vikings. These people didn't just open up the fridge and put their food in there and just store it. We're not used to eating cold food. So that's why they would have fermentation and different ways to preserve things. Eventually we came up with canning, which is also good, pickling, right? We didn't have chilling as a mechanism. This is a very new thing. Our bodies have not evolved to catch up with cold stuff coming in. So what happens when you eat a smoothie? Okay, when you drink a smoothie, when you shove a smoothie through your face and into your body, what happens? It's cold in there. It's going to cold shock all the internal organs that it comes near. It's cold shock in your stomach, right? You ever get a brain freeze? Is this a good feeling? That's happening in your stomach too. It's happening in your intestines. And the really wild thing with smoothies is that oftentimes, if you have a smoothie, okay, after this video, you're gonna be like, oh, I don't know if I want a smoothie again. But if you do it, check it out about an hour later and feel around on your abdomen, on the skin, and see if you can find the cold spot where that thing's working through. All right, this is really important to understand because with complex chronic health conditions, energy is oftentimes low. Fatigue, exhaustion, right? The mitochondria are suffering. We already have a lack of energy. There's also a body temperature thing going on where some people can get hot with these conditions. I understand that it does happen, especially if there's endocrine, like hormonal disruption. And also if you have different types of bacteria that are taking over with a dysbiosis in your gut, primarily, that can start to change the temperature in your body. It all messes with your hypothalamus and they can start to create heat. You can feel heat and inflammation. It's usually a false heat. Oftentimes that heat is better to get rid of that. When you start to clear out infections and pathogens and the internal compost pile of your gut, all of a sudden that kind of fake heat starts to go away. Most people are actually cold underneath. And you also have folks with complex chronic illnesses who already are running cold. They're just chilly, cold hands, cold feet, can't warm up, always cold, right? There's kind of 2 different types of people that this happens with. But either way, even if you're hot, it's most likely heat due to bacteria or inflammation. It's not actually the real heat of your metabolism. All this is to say, okay, that most people in this situation do not have extra energy to spare. And what do we do when we eat our food? What happens with our food? We have to break our food down. We have to turn our food into us. What that means is anything you eat, anything, whether it's a sandwich or a smoothie or a steak or a potato or whatever it is, it has to become you. It has to become compatible with your body. That means temperature and moisture have to become equalized. right? If we're about 70 or 80% water and we eat a bunch of dry food, our body then has to supply fluids into that to make it absorbable for us. Think about that, right? That's a whole other topic of conversation, how to eat when you have chronic illness, okay? We need to eat smart. And then there's also the temperature. So if we eat a bunch of cold foods, where is that heat going to come from to bring it up to body temperature? Well, you have to provide that. So now you're taxing your organs, right? Think about that. Think about the blood flow. How now when you throw something cold into your stomach, what happens to that blood flow around your stomach? What happens there? It's all going to get tight and contract. And then we have to send more blood. We have to compensate. And now we've got to send more blood there to try to warm the area up. So we're sending blood, we're sending energy, right? In Eastern medicine, it's like qi, they'd call it. We're sending qi or yang, right? We're sending that vital force to warm up a smoothie, okay? When that could be healing you, some of that energy. You got to think about it like your battery. You're sending some of your battery to go warm up a smoothie. It's a metabolically expensive thing to eat, to consume. So there's the cold, okay? That's for one is the cold thing. It's relatively new for our body to even be exposed to cold foods. And some of the problems that come with that is that it's going to be hard to digest. It's going to take your energy. It's going to sap some of your energy. It's going to beat up your digestive system, okay? So that's one reason. So the cold, and we can work around that. Number two, and I'm going to save the best one for last, of course, right? But number two is also good, is that when you eat smoothies, you're taking usually foods that you would have chewed, and instead of chewing them with your teeth, you're blending them in a blender, okay? The blender becomes the external teeth in that sense. And you can actually look at the whole kitchen. This is a little bit of a bigger topic, right? But you can look at your whole kitchen as an external manifestation of your digestive system. Okay, this is something that we'll look at in different videos, right? But at least for smoothies, the blender becomes your teeth. Yeah, think about it. You're taking solid foods, frozen foods, and you're chewing them up with the blades. So now we've taken that work off of the teeth, which is okay. Yeah, maybe I don't like to chew, right? Whatever, that's fine. But what happens when you chew, it's not just about your teeth, it's also about the saliva. So if you were to eat a handful of strawberries, for example, and you put those strawberries in your mouth and you're chewing them, what's happening is you're mixing in saliva into those berries as your teeth are mashing them up, okay? And there's a lot of other things happening too. You're smelling them. There's this whole experience because they stay in your mouth for a while. So your saliva comes, and then you have amylase in there, which helps to break down. It's an enzyme that helps to break down some of these carbs, right? The sugars of the strawberries. You need amylase to come in there, and that is made in your saliva. So when you're chewing those strawberries up, you're working that, you're grinding that saliva into there, you're mashing them up, and you're adding these enzymes that start to break down and digest those strawberries so that you can then extract the nutrition from them, right? By the time they hit your stomach, they're already starting to get pre-digested because you were chewing with your saliva, mixing that in there. When you have the smoothie, you use the blender for the teeth, and now who chews their smoothie? Who takes a drink and then, right? Nobody does that. You drink it, you swallow it. So we're missing that opportunity to work that saliva in. And because it's happening so fast, we don't get all the smelling and we don't get all the triggers to even make more saliva. So there's a lot of stuff in here nobody thinks about, nobody talks about. Like I said, it looks good on paper, okay, but we miss the saliva. So then what do we have? Now we've got a bunch of strawberries or fruit or whatever it is that's been mechanically broken down, but it's not having the enzyme activity. So you're going to have a different substrate going in. You may be attracting different bacteria to that. Which leads me to number 3, right? Feeding pathogens. This is a big one. This is massive. Most people that have complex chronic inflammatory conditions, right? No matter what it is, no matter what the diagnosis is, there's usually more than one thing going on. That's just the way it is. We have our reductionist society where we try to look at this, it's the one we've diagnosed you. It's the one pathogen, right? It is candida, or it is mold, or if we can't find anything, then we say, it must be a fibromyalgia or something, right? That's how it works. They're language games. But in reality, these pathogens, even Lyme disease, right? They come with co-infections. It's an ecosystem in here. Once you get some bad actors, that opens up opportunities for other bad actors to come. They work together. So you'll have a lot of pathogen activity going on, which the immune system sometimes can't handle. And what gets really interesting, is that when you take superfoods, adaptogenic herbs, and all these things that have very high antioxidant capability, right? That's for one. The antioxidants start to make it a little more difficult for your immune system to actually oxidize like it wants to the pathogens, right? So this is a whole other topic of conversation, but you're basically skipping stages. For those of you that are familiar with my work or have been around modern vitality, you understand we have a 4-stage model: immune, digestive, neuroadrenal, blood circulation. And then there's a bonus 5th stage where we have supplementing and boosting and all that stuff. Most of the time, I don't even have to talk about that because most people start there, supplements, antioxidants, boosting, and it doesn't ultimately work, right? Which is why you wind up on a channel like this, because you're trying to learn more about your health so you can figure out the pieces of the puzzle and know what you should be doing so you can get your life back and stop having to feel like your world's shrinking, right? So by nature, if you're here, the other things probably didn't do it. I understand this, okay? This is my job. I see people in this situation all day long. This is what we do. We work internationally. There's people all over the world with the same types of problems because there's such kind of a misconception out there about what healthy is and what we need to do to get our health back. These are the kinds of things we address in our group. I'll tell you more about our group in a little bit. If you haven't heard about that, something you may consider joining. It's a free group to join. So when we look at skipping stages, okay, immune system, digestive, neuroadrenal, blood circulation, and then that 5th stage is where we have all the boosting and the adaptogens and things like that. If you have a complex chronic health condition, you need to work through the stages of healing in order. That's what your body wants. When you skip stages, you get problems. You'll feel better for about a month, and then you get way worse: setbacks, crashes, etc. There's a lot of consequences for that. I've talked about that in other videos. I'm not going to dive into it here in too much detail, except to say that most of the times when we shove a bunch of superfoods, herbs, things like that belong in the stage 5 category, right? These adaptogenic herbs and things that are oftentimes something where you're getting a lot of energy. Oh, it's an energy tonic, right? This is all boosting type strategies. When you shove a bunch of that in your body, okay, and you haven't addressed immune system, hidden pathogens first, what are we doing? We are feeding pathogens, okay? Because guess what? All those bacteria that are taking over, all those fungi that are taking over, they love goji berries. They want to eat that. They love that stuff, okay? That's fuel for them. You're feeding excess. You're feeding stagnation. So what's in the smoothie oftentimes are very heavy boosting type herbs, supplements. These are really things that are like stage 5 type approaches. And they're super appropriate when you get to that point, when your body's graduated through the stages, super appropriate, right? It's just fine. But if you have inflammation running rampant, okay, and your immune system's trying to figure out what to do about these pathogens, and meanwhile you're packing in a cold smoothie that drains the energy out of your body to try to warm it up, that you don't chew, so it's not even breaking down properly, and then it's getting delivered to a bunch of bugs that are living in your gut that are just having a party, it's counterproductive. Okay, not good. There are better ways to do this. And I'm going to show you actually some workarounds so that if you don't want to give up your morning smoothie, you don't have to. Actually, I'm not big on taking things away from people, but I'd rather add a little bit so that you can offset some of the damage. So we'll get to that in just a second here. But first we need to finish up with these pathogens because this is so important. When you feed pathogens, you are causing further problems. You're making it harder for your immune system. If you haven't handled stage 1, the smoothies aren't going to be your friend. If you haven't handled stage 2, right? If your digestive system isn't tuned up, if you don't have a good, happy ecosystem there, if you've got leaky gut or inflammation there, then guess what? You're not absorbing the stuff from the smoothies anyway. If you're malabsorptive, right? If you're not pulling in nutrients, if your digestive system, like you don't produce the right enzymes, whatever's off, okay? And there's different ways people can be off. If you don't produce that, then how are you supposed to extract all the nutrition, right? So there's going to be, of course, you're feeding excess. Again, you're feeding stagnation. These things can turn into basically a compost pile. It goes from a cold smoothie to all of a sudden, by the time it gets to the bottom of your gut, it's still an undigested food mass, and you've just got all kinds of bacteria and other microbes just acting on it. And then you can get further inflammation, right? It's not fun. So do it in order, right? Keep the stages. You need to go systematically. It will help you a lot. I've seen where people, every time we skip stages, we get problems. It's just one of those things. So we have a group. If you are struggling with a complex chronic health condition, you might consider applying for our group. The application is in the description for this video, and I'll take a look. And if you seem like a good fit for our group, I'll get you in as soon as I can. There might be a wait. We keep the group kind of small. It's lovely people, super positive, very vibrant, happy environment where everybody's like focused on their progress and their next steps and kind of going through the journey of healing. It's international. It's a lovely place to be, but we do keep it small and we do fill up. So I'll do my best to get you in on the next monthly cohort. Might be about a month wait or so. I try to get you in as soon as I can. So in the meantime, consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel so that you can start to see things that help you get your health back instead of just binge watching whatever YouTube wants to show you. Okay, very important. So what can we do? Jeremy, I don't want to give up my smoothies. I still like smoothies. I heard what you said. I think it's important, but I still like them, right? It's part of my health routine. Great. Let's offset some of the damage. For one, we've got the temperature thing, right? A smoothie's cold. I'm not going to tell you to drink it warm. That's disgusting. You don't want to drink it warm. It's gross. Actually, if you're trying to quit smoothies, maybe that's a rule you could do. Oh, I only drink my smoothies warm. Well, you won't drink smoothies anymore. Okay, they're nasty like that. But drink them cold, go nuts, have at it. However, make a cup of tea, right? While you're making your smoothie, get some water boiling, steep ginger tea, for example, right? Ginger has a warming nature in terms of the energetics of that herb, right? It's warming nature. It's going to help to offset, helps digestion, helps your stomach. Of course, if you're allergic to ginger, this isn't medical advice, right? Use your own discretion here. We're all adults, but ginger tea, that's one idea. And now you have not only a warm herb coming in, the ginger is energetically warming, but you also have it in a warm liquid medium, which is your hot cup of tea. So drink your smoothie, chug it down, go nuts, right? But also follow it, chase it with a warm beverage so that at least you can take some of that thermal energy from your tea kettle instead of from your body's vitality to warm that smoothie up. So then when you're drinking a warm tea, it can start to warm up that smoothie while it's in your belly. It'll make it easier on your tummy. Okay, so that's one. Ginger's really good for a lot of things like inflammation. I mean, it's a very powerful herb anyway. It's one that if you had to pick, I would actually have most people who have complex chronic inflammatory conditions, instead of a smoothie, just go with the ginger tea, right? But I understand sometimes you don't want to put the smoothie down, or you already, you bought a whole thing of frozen mangoes and you want to use them, right? Okay, great. Go. You're going to do it anyway. You might as well chase it with ginger tea and warm up and start to offset some of that damage. Another one, saliva, right? If you're going to have the smoothie, okay, try chewing it. See what that's like. There's an old saying about chewing your drinks and drinking your food, right? What does that mean? It means if you're going to drink something like a smoothie, chew it around, mix some saliva in there. Don't just shoot it down and blast it and then kind of go on to the next thing. You actually need to savor it and mix it around and try to consciously smell it, right? Smelling it will help to trigger more salivation. It's cold, so it's a little tricky, but you can smell it and start to get more saliva that way. Mix it in, swallow your saliva. You can develop a saliva swallowing practice. This is an old Taoist thing, right? It's kind of like yoga, where you do all these things to move saliva around your mouth, and then you generate a bunch of it, swallow it. Might be a good way to chase your smoothie, okay? Not as good as actually chewing the food yourself, but it's better than nothing, okay? And then number 3, right? Get a plan. Understand the stages, because the real answer here, like we're getting lost in the branches of like, okay, what kind of smoothie should I have or what herbs or whatever. Really, you need to zoom out and have a framework where you even know what department of your body you're working on next. And usually it starts with the immune system. So get a plan, get everything together. This is the kind of stuff we talk about this in our group. We have conversations within our group every single day. We have people coming through that need troubleshooting, and you can see how I do that. You can ask me anything you want in there. I've got a vault full of other videos that are interactive, so you can get a little more personal understanding of what's going on with you and where you need to be, right? But get a plan. You got to understand stage 1 is the immune system for a lot of reasons. And so by going to smoothies, stage 5, by kind of skipping steps, you're creating a little bit more problems for yourself. But if you can offset that, if you can start to get the pathogen load down, if you can start to get your biofilm levels lower, right? Biofilms are like the slime that bacteria and these things all hide in. Okay, if you can get that happening, if you can get your immune system a little more precise, they call it immune specificity, where your immune system is not just like smoldering and trying to figure out what's going on, but it's actually like a sniper going in and going, oh, pathogen, poof, got it. Pathogen, poof, got it. Very clean. Get your liver functioning so that you're actually getting these things out of your body. Sweating, having good bowel movements, right? Get all that stuff tuned up. Then later, when you're feeling better, when you got your life back, right? And you're traveling again and you're able to be there for your friends and family and help people, and you're going out dancing and whatever else you're into, right? And life is back. You're able to walk your dog, some of the things that seem so simple that people take for granted. But once you don't have the strength to walk your dog anymore, all of a sudden that would be a huge win, right? To get that back. Once that stuff happens and you're starting to feel your vitality come back and you've graduated through some of the stages, then you want to introduce some smoothies. I would still go with the ginger tea. Just I have a bias towards warming up the digestion, right? Of course. But if you want to do that then, that's more appropriate. Just like you don't want to necessarily train for a marathon or a triathlon if you're bedbound and have chronic pain, right? You're all inflamed, brain fog. You don't need to be training for an athletic event. But if you can get your health back and start to do moderate exercise, then maybe you start to feel like, sure, yeah, I could do a 5K or a walkathon or whatever. Then your goals evolve, right? So don't go too far ahead of yourself physically, of course. Everybody knows that. But when we start to look at foods and supplements and things like that, nobody's got a map like this. And everybody's going all over the place. Eating a smoothie is basically the equivalent of trying to run a 5K or a triathlon or something when you're sick, right? It's a digestive endurance event. So I would offer you the suggestion, maybe you're better off just dumping it in the toilet, right? Or give it to somebody else who doesn't have the same health issues and just wait and work the stages and work the program until you're at the place where you can handle it too. So there you go. I hope this helps you. Let's get you feeling better. Cheers.